April 26, 1986, started like any other spring night near the Chernobyl Nuclear Power Plant, just outside Pripyat, Ukraine. I can't imagine anyone expecting what came next. Air was still, the usual hum of the plant in the background, when suddenly, a blinding flash tore through the darkness. Deep inside reactor number 4, something had gone catastrophically wrong. Radioactive material shot into the air, and fires erupted that would smolder for days. The energy released was unlike anything a civilian power station had ever produced. Some comparisons suggest it rivaled the worst reactor disasters ever recorded, though I have to admit, numbers alone barely capture the scale of it. By the early hours, a strange and unprepared army had emerged. Firefighters scrambled onto rooftops. Soldiers, engineers, miners, and volunteers pushed into the skeletal remains of the reactor building, most of them with almost no understanding of the invisible danger around them. Radiation in some areas exceeded thousands of roentgens per hour, enough to kill a person in minutes. But very few knew this. Firefighters sprayed water on burning graphite and scattered fuel fragments. One survivor later described a metallic taste and pins and needles creeping across his face, as if the air itself was trying to burn him from the inside. Hospitals filled quickly. Doctors noted symptoms hour by hour: nausea, vomiting, hair loss, burns. Some men, delirious from exposure, reported hallucinations, floors rippling, walls crawling with shadows. I keep thinking about that image, and it still makes me shiver. And yet, the instructions were blunt. Put out the fires, clear the debris, contain the contamination. Hesitation was rarely allowed, even when fear screamed otherwise. The operation grew quickly. By June, official records counted hundreds of thousands of liquidators from across the Soviet Union, eventually topping 600,000 as the cleanup dragged into 1987. Soldiers poured concrete and steel over the shattered reactor core, while miners tunneled beneath, trying to keep molten fuel from reaching groundwater. Helicopters flew thousands of sorties, dumping sand, boron, clay, and lead, though much of it likely never touched the reactor's molten heart. Pilots navigated clouds of radiation, often vomiting mid-flight, strapping on lead shielding in cockpits just to survive a few minutes. I can't even picture what that must have felt like. Each mission lasted only minutes, but those minutes could cause damage that would kill weeks or months later. Radiation didn't fade quickly. It lingered, embedding itself in soil, clothing, and the bodies of anyone who touched it. Protective gear was often makeshift: cotton uniforms patched with thin lead, homemade masks that barely filtered dust, wristband dosimeters that failed under extreme exposure. Communication was patchy, leaving many unaware of the real danger. Propaganda portrayed smiling, stoic heroes hauling debris, while families back home remained largely in the dark. Some never learned their sons wouldn't return. The human toll was unpredictable and cruel. Younger, fit men sometimes survived exposures that older veterans could not. Others, like Ivan Vlasenko, built decontamination showers and handled contaminated clothing, only to spend years battling chronic illnesses linked to that work. Thyroid cancers, leukemia, heart disease, cataracts. These were all traced back to radiation exposure. Official records list 28 deaths from acute radiation sickness within months, but the long-term numbers were far higher. Recognition and compensation arrived slowly, bogged down in bureaucracy, leaving families to deal with grief and the practical burdens of life afterward. It's hard not to wonder how many more suffered quietly, never counted. The environmental damage was immediate and stark. Forests within the 30-kilometer exclusion zone went almost instantly red-brown, earning the grim nickname Red Forest. Teams wielded axes and shovels, cutting and burying trees, lungs and skin absorbing radioactive dust as they tried to protect rivers and soil. Villages were evacuated, rivers diverted, roads cleared, buildings scrubbed, often without understanding that radiation sticks to surfaces far longer than anyone expected. Later studies reconstructed exposure patterns, showing that liquidators engaged in high-risk tasks often received doses dozens of times higher than normal background levels. Over months of grueling work, crews labored to construct a massive concrete and steel sarcophagus over the reactor, a structure meant to lock away the worst contamination and allow nearby reactors to resume limited operation. It was finished in November 1986, only after endless shifts under relentless risk. Pripyat itself became almost unrecognizable. Streets that once echoed with children and shoppers were silent. Playgrounds grew wild, glowing faintly under Geiger counters. Checkpoints, showers, and exposure limits became part of daily life for anyone allowed back in. Many liquidators became trapped in cycles of repeated hazardous work, often with little social support at home. Post-traumatic stress, survivor guilt, and depression were everywhere. Even men who initially seemed healthy later developed serious illnesses. I find it hard to picture how people carried on day to day with that weight, returning to their families while carrying invisible scars. The story of the liquidators is almost impossible to fully grasp. These men were not conventional soldiers nor victims of an obvious enemy, yet they faced an invisible, relentless force born of human error. Monuments now honor their work, but numbers alone don't convey the full cost. Lives cut short, bodies damaged, families left behind. By climbing wrecked rooftops, digging beneath molten cores, and scrubbing radioactive dust from every surface, they contained a disaster that could have claimed millions more. They did this with inadequate protection, often without understanding the full stakes, and somehow they endured. Their perseverance, messy, human, faltering at times, shows what people are capable of when confronted with something almost unimaginable.